The night did not arrive quietly, it crashed down like a verdict, cold and merciless, the kind of frozen darkness that makes even grown men feel small, and on that night the words "please wake up" were not spoken loudly or heroically but whispered again and again into the frostbitten air by a trembling soul who refused to accept what the world seemed determined to take away, because lying on the snow-covered pavement under a flickering streetlight was a body that was not supposed to be still, not supposed to be silent, and certainly not supposed to be dying. And before this story pulls you deeper into that freezing night and the lives it would change forever, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that even the hardest hearts can be softened, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel for more real and emotional stories like this, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this story belongs to all of us. The man on the ground was named Michael Crow, a road captain for a local Hells Angels chapter, known for his iron posture, weathered face, and a reputation built over decades of asphalt, loyalty, and silence. But stripped of his leather and authority, he was just another human body losing its battle against the cold. While kneeling beside him was Ethan Cole, younger, newer, still carrying the weight of a past he never talked about, his gloved hands shaking as he tried to remember everything he had ever learned about helping someone in shock. Panic flooding his chest as the snow kept falling, blurring the world into a quiet white tunnel where time felt slowed and cruel. Earlier that evening the brothers had been riding back from a charity run they never expected anyone to remember, engines cutting through the winter air as laughter echoed inside helmets. But the road does not care about laughter or legacy, and a patch of black ice on an abandoned stretch of highway sent Michael's bike sliding, not violently, not dramatically, just enough to steal balance. Enough to throw him into the cold, enough to start a countdown. No one could see. Ethan had doubled back when he noticed Michael was no longer behind him, a simple decision that would later haunt and heal him all at once, because when he found Michael unconscious, breath shallow, skin already losing warmth, the fear that gripped him was not the fear of death but the fear of helplessness, the same fear he had felt years earlier when life taught him that sometimes wanting someone to live is not enough. The cold was the first enemy, biting through layers, numbing fingers, stealing strength, and Ethan fought it the only way he knew how, by refusing to stop, by pressing his jacket over Michael's chest, by rubbing warmth into lifeless hands, by begging the night to give them time. And in those moments the past crept in uninvited, reminding Ethan of the mistakes that led him to the Angels in the first place, the broken home, the nights sleeping in his car, the anger that once defined him, and how Michael had been the one to offer him a place at the table. Without asking questions, proving that brotherhood was not about perfection but about showing up when it mattered most, calls went out into the frozen dark, engines turned back, headlights cut through snow like blades, and one by one the brothers arrived, men often misunderstood by the world now standing in a silent circle, faces hardened by life but eyes wide with the same fear, because no patches or reputations could protect them from the sight of one of their own fading away. They worked together without commands, without chaos, some blocking the wind, others calling emergency services, one lighting flares that painted the snow in red, a color that felt too close to loss, while Ethan stayed at Michael's side, counting breaths, refusing to let the silence win, his mind screaming those same 3 words over and over, "Please wake up," not as a demand but as a promise that he would not give up even if the night tried to freeze hope itself. The wait for help felt endless, seconds stretching into eternities, and with every shiver Michael's body gave, Ethan felt his own resolve cracking, because the hardest challenge was not the cold or the fear but the creeping doubt, the thought that maybe this was how it ended, not with sirens and speeches but with snow settling quietly on leather and steel. When the ambulance finally arrived, lights flashing like a miracle against the dark, the relief was so sharp it almost hurt. Paramedics moving fast, voices calm and controlled, lifting Michael away while Ethan stumbled back, legs weak, realizing only then how exhausted he was, how close he had come to breaking. And as the doors closed and the ambulance disappeared into the night, none of the men cheered or spoke, because they all understood that survival was not yet guaranteed, that the battle had only shifted locations. The hours that followed were a blur of hospital corridors, vending machine coffee, silent prayers offered by men who rarely prayed, and the long, brutal uncertainty that forces you to confront what truly matters. And in that waiting room Ethan learned another lesson, that strength is not the absence of fear but the decision to stay even when fear begs you to run. And he stayed, all of them did, through the night, through the next morning, through updates that offered little comfort, because leaving was never an option. When Michael finally opened his eyes, days later, it was not dramatic. There were no grand speeches or tears in that moment, just a slow return to life, a subtle breath that felt louder than any engine, and news of his survival spread quietly, carried by relieved smiles and heavy sighs, changing something deep inside every man who had stood in that snow, because they had seen how fragile even the strongest among them could be. Recovery was slow and humbling, forcing Michael to confront a vulnerability he had never allowed himself, and forcing Ethan to accept that sometimes doing everything right does not guarantee the outcome, but it still matters. It always matters. And as weeks passed and winter loosened its grip, the Angels began doing something different, something unexpected, organizing more charity rides, more outreach, more moments of presence that had nothing to do with image and everything to do with gratitude, because once you have begged life not to take someone you love, you do not waste the days you are given afterward. If this story is touching something inside you right now, if it's reminding you of someone you almost lost or someone who stayed when you needed them most, take a moment near the end of this video to like, share, and comment, because your engagement helps stories like this reach others who need to hear them. And before this story closes, I ask you personally to comment one simple thing below. The name of someone you are grateful is still here. Someone you would whisper please wake up for without hesitation, because gratitude shared has a way of keeping hope alive. The frozen night did not just test the Hells Angels, it reshaped them, carving compassion into places once guarded by pride, proving that brotherhood is not about how hard you ride but how firmly you hold on when the world turns cold. And long after the snow melted and the road dried, the memory of that night remained, not as trauma but as a quiet reminder that even in the harshest cold, human warmth can change everything.